Okay. So I'll just start off to show you a little bit what's new here at out in the shop. So underneath this tarp here, we've got a large 50-foot long tank that's currently being sandblasted and it's going to be painted, and then a few weeks will be shipped off to the customer. So that's a nice big machine that we've got going through the shop right now. Out on the other side, we've got the main final assembly bay. We've got a Z-series machine here ready to ship. A couple machines in the background there getting built up, and then we've got a dedicated water-only machine right here, dual heads. That'll be shipping in probably about another week or so, and then this is the cross beam that will be going with that 50-foot long tank that we just saw under the tarp there. So that's a little bit what's going on in the factory today. Let's see, sales model, that one there, so we'll close those out. So, all right, so just want to start off and first of all review where you'd be able to find last month's webinar. So if you weren't able to attend last month's webinar, you want to review it, you want to have somebody else in your company watch it, if you go to the Waterjet channel on YouTube and then search for WARDCAM, then this video here will come up. So I'll just go back to so there's the Waterjet web page or Waterjet YouTube page, and then on here you can search for WARDCAM and it'll be on the first couple of videos there. So about an hour-long video you can watch for the basics of WARDCAM. So wanted to review updating WARDCAM. So periodically you might want to update your WARDCAM, or if you're going to be installing it on a new computer, you want to do that. Basically, you can go to this site here, ikulu.wardjet.com, which will bring up this this main page here. And then down here, we've got the WARDCAM area. So as I mentioned in the previous webinar, we've got two versions of WARDCAM out right now. We've got this latest version that we're calling Midnight WARDCAM. If you haven't seen it yet, you'll see in a moment why we call it Midnight WARDCAM. And then down here, we've got the older version, or the Sun edition of WARDCAM. So if you've got the older edition now, you've got the USB dongles, then this would be the version that you'd want to download. And the newer version, if you're using the Midnight WARDCAM, this would be the version you would download, and then somebody from Waterjet would have to log on to that computer and activate it. So I'm just going to go ahead and download this here. Just takes a moment. We'll stick in my downloads folder here. And let me go ahead and close out of my current WARDCAM. All right, so it's a pretty quick download, and I'll just double click on that and we'll click on Run. And key thing when you're doing this installation, especially if you've already been using WARDCAM for a bit and you've got materials set up the way that you like it and such, is, and you may get this little warning that comes up, just click on Allow this file. You will get to a screen here where it's going to prompt you for whether you want to overwrite your material database and posts and things like that. So you can choose your installation location. So this screen here, if you have modified your materials, you got a lot of custom materials, things like that, you'd want to uncheck this overwrite database box here. And that way your materials won't get overwritten. If we've done custom posts for you, you've got unique machines from different manufacturers, you'd want to uncheck the post box also, but I'm going to leave mine checked for right now. Actually, I'll undo it. I don't know what I've done. Click on Install, and again, fairly quick installation process. And as we're going along here, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them into the chat area of the GoToMeeting window, and I'll try to answer them either as we're going along or at the end here. So that's done. So now I'll go ahead and start it up. And it's coming up on my other screen here, so I'll drag this over. So this is the newer Midnight version of WARDCAM for those of you who haven't seen it before. So if we go into, I'll show you where the backup files are stored, just in case you ever want to check that out here. Let me just bring this over here. So if I go to Basically, the Midnight WARDCAM is installed under C program files. The older version of WARDCAM is installed under program files x86. And then if you're doing the newer version under WARDCAM, we have this backups area here. So this is going to have every backup that's been made for every installation that you've done of WARDCAM. So back to my very first time that I installed Midnight WARDCAM, I've got the backups here. So if you go into any of these and then you go into the data folder, you've got both your machine and your material database. So if you do accidentally overwrite your material database, you should have a backup in this area here. And next we'll take a look at command line cutting. So a lot of people, when they first get WARDCAM, they're interested in the ability to do command line cutting, and that is using one cut to separate two parts and save on cutting time. So of course you have two rectangles, something like that, and you want to be able to, rather than use two separate cuts to separate them, put them close together, basically your stream width apart, and then just come with one cut down the middle to separate them. If you've seen our iGEMS product or that webinar, common cutting in iGEMS is quite well developed, very easy to do. WARDCAM, it's a little more involved, so just wanted to step through those steps as if you do want to try to do command line cutting. Ultimately, command line cutting is a little bit easier with water-only cutting, a little bit trickier with abrasive. Key thing is you want to make sure that you're going to avoid parts tipping up. So if you are going to try to do command line cutting, you want to make sure that your parts are going to span at least 3 of the grates on our table. So it should be at least 12 inches, so that if as you cut things free, hopefully they don't tip up and cause you to break your nozzle and such. So just have to be quite careful about that when you start getting into command line cutting, that the parts are big enough that they're not going to tip up. So what I'll do here is typically you're going to start in your CAD package and draw something out. So if I want to cut, say, 9 squares like this, 12 by 12, what I would typically do is first array it out. And when you array it out, you want to leave your stream width between the parts here. So I've got a 40 thousandths gap between each of these. So you lay it out for your stream width depending on the nozzle that you're using. And then next step in the process is going to be you're just going to draw some lines down the middle between each of those parts, and that's going to be your common cut. So when you program these cuts here in WARDCAM, these are considered open contours. We don't apply any tool offset to open contours, so that's why you have to put the gap between the parts, and we'll basically go right down the middle of these lines with our stream. A couple other things you want to pay attention of if you're doing this. You're going to want to extend your lines a little bit beyond each edge so you can pierce off the edge of the parts to avoid blemishes. And then another little thing I like to do is I'll put a little line segment, 10-20 thousandths of an inch long, at the beginning and the end, and this is going to force WARDCAM to put code into here, so it's going to cut slowly when it first starts off here. If you just do this as a straight line, WARDCAM doesn't apply any ramping to straight lines, so it's going to start off at whatever cut quality that you choose for that open contour, which could be too fast and might take quarter inch or so before the jet actually cuts into the material. So to avoid that, just put a short little line segment in there, and that'll make it do this little area here nice and slow, and it should pierce through before it gets to the part. And I've got the same thing at the other end here when it's coming out. Having that little line segment there is going to force the Waterjet to ramp down, slow down when it's coming to the end here. And after I did that, then I would basically just draw a rectangle around the parts, and this yellow rectangle that I've got here is actually the geometry that I'm going to use as my closed contour to cut around all those pieces at the end. So that's one way to do that. The other way, if you wanted to be even a little fancier with this, this one up here, we would have 5 cuts. We'd have two horizontal, 2 vertical, and then the 5th one, the outside cut. If you wanted to, you could get it down to 4 cuts by doing it with a technique like this, where on the outside cut, you also offset the outside cut by your 20 thou per side, and then you leave a very small gap at the end here, and then this will make this cut also be an open contour, and we'll use our open contour command to program the outside cut. So here I program my rectangles for being 12.040 to account for my stream width. I arrayed those out and then basically connect lines top to bottom so that we can use that in our open contour command for our toolpath. So let me just run those through WARDCAM so you can see how that would work. So we'll do this one here. So in this drawing file, I have both versions side by side. So we zoom in, you can see the little line segments there for the force the ramping, and this one here at the end, we've got the little gap there, so we can do that outside cut, and this last vertical cut is one cut. So we'll start with this one here on the right first. So I'll just go to my next process, and I'm going to go with a 1440, and I'll just do aluminum 1/4 inch. So these gray lines, these are open contours because the start and end points don't connect. So I come over here on the right, choose my open contour cutting, choose what quality that I want to use for this open contour cut. We'll just stick with normal. And then I can just click on whichever end of the line that I want to pierce at for the open contour cut. So if I want to start over here with this line, click here. And then as I click, it's adding these cuts to my cut order up here. And then I'll pierce this one over here. And then I'll start this one here. And then this one here. So that would take care of those 4 common cuts. And then I would hit my next button, go to our toolpath screen here, and then click wherever I want to put my lead in. So up here in my cut sequence box, I can make this a little bit, actually don't need to. So we got open contour. So as I click on these, you can see over on the left there what cut is highlighted. We've got our 2 vertical cuts and then the outside cut. And then when I go to toolpath, make the CNC file out of this, we'll see here now that we start off at relatively slow speed. It actually slows down for that short little corner there. Should allow it to pierce through, and then it's going to accelerate and do most of the cut at the 39.8 inches per minute. So that's doing it that way. If we do the other one, I'll just go ahead and delete all here and go back to this area here. So this one here would work similarly, except we're doing all of these as open contour cuts. I've got my open contour cut command selected, and again, click on the end of the line that I want to pierce at. So we'll pierce at that end for this one, and then that end for this one, this end, and then we want to start down here, and then again, it'll go all the way around and ending up there. So we would hit our next button. Now for this one, we don't have to do anything in here because we've got all of our cuts programmed using the open contour command. So I can just hit enter and create the CNC file. And we'll save that. And again, we can see the effect of the ramping with those short little line segments there. And if we wanted to take a look at it in our little controller simulator here, either one of these can go into my edit file area here. And if I zoom in down here, we can see whatever segment here is highlighted red. That's the line of code that we're on right here. So it basically slows down for that little corner and then is going to speed up and do the rest of the cut at the 39.8 until it gets to the other end and slows down for that there. So that's basically how you can program for common line cutting. It does take a little bit of work on the front end and the CAD to get it laid out properly, a little bit of thought involved, but it is something that can be done. So next up, I want to show you how to take advantage of programmable Z-axis motion, if that's a feature that you have on your machine. Not all of our machines have programmable Z motion. One way that you can tell is when you're at the controller, and let me bring that back up over here again, is if you look down, in this case in the lower right-hand corner, we see that we've got Z coordinates, so that's one good clue there that we have programmable Z. Also, if I come into my move panel, and if I'm able to tell the Z to move in a specific distance, so tell it that I want to move up, in this case I have to go negative, of course, so we'll go down 1.25 inches, or 5, whatever, click on play, and my Z-axis moves. So this tells me that I've got programmable Z on this machine. So sometimes having programmable Z is great because if you have parts that you do think might tip up, you can program the head to move up and down between the cuts and hopefully avoid some collisions, hopefully all collisions. So let me open up a different file here. All right, so part like this. So if we're concerned about slugs or something tipping up or the part tipping up, we can just go through, program it as normal. I'll just stick with the 1/4" aluminum, and I'll do whatever for the toolpath, and hit the next button here. And so normally, when we would make this, unless you've already got it turned on, we would not see any sort of Z codes between these cuts. So water and abrasive is turning off, and then we have a G00, which is a rapid traverse, so there's no Z motion in this program right now. If I want to make some Z motion, if I go into the options area and then click on edit variables, it'll open up this window here, and I can scroll over, and over here on the right, sorry, too far, height sensor tab. So height sensor tab, if you scroll down, you're going to have options for this one here for use height sensor. So if you turn this on, then that tells WARDCAM that you do want to use height sensor, but we're not actually using a height sensor. We're going to use Programmable Z. And to get it to do that, we've got fields up here where we can tell it things like height sensor up, which rather than using our normal height sensor code, which is either G95 or G98 or 9, we're just going to tell it to put in a G00Z1, which will tell the cutting head to move up 1 inch. And then we've also got a command up here for height sensor down, and we're going to set that one to G00Z0. So that's going to bring the cutting head back down to where we started the program from. So since we're basing all of our programs off of where we start, all of our coordinates are based off of where we start a program, this is going to bring the cutting head back down to where it was when we started the program. There's a couple other fields up here at the top that you would you can either delete out or you can just comment out with a semicolon. So you can just put a semicolon in front of this one, first height sensor. And once you've done that, also down here at the bottom, we've got Z pop-up distance. So that's going to tell it how far you want to rise between cuts. So we'll go ahead and save and exit. And if I click on my CNC button now, create my CNC file again. So we'll see at the beginning of the program, we're going to go up 1 inch, and then we're going to rapid, and then we're going to come back down to where we started, do the cut, and then we should have the same thing also between all these cuts, up, over, down, and so on. So that's how you can take advantage of Programmable Z. If you are going to try this, I'd strongly encourage you to, the first time that you do it away from any parts, materials, things like that that you might crash into. Do it a couple inches off the table. So if you got numbers swapped around or something like that, you typed in the wrong numbers, hopefully you don't crash into anything. So just be a little cautious about that. If you need any help with that, you can certainly give me a call at any time and can help you out. And also just want to review the all-important scroll lock key. Talked about it on the last webinar. I like to talk about it every time because not everybody knows about the secrets of the scroll lock key. So if this scroll lock key is turned on, which sometimes you have to use your on-screen keyboard because a lot of keyboards nowadays don't have the scroll lock key. Come into your on-screen keyboard and turn on the scroll lock key. When that's turned on, every option that's available, for example, in this options menu is visible. And over here in this right-hand side here, any of these buttons that are gray means that those options would not be visible if my scroll lock key were not engaged or activated. So if we go to that, back to that height sensors tab, all these buttons over here are blue, which means if I turn the scroll lock key off, all of those are still going to be visible. If I didn't want some of these to be visible because I didn't want somebody to come in and mess with some of these things, I can turn them off. We'll turn off a few of those. Whatever we want have visible, click on save and exit, and then turn my scroll lock key off, and then go back into edit variables and back onto that height sensors tab. Now those ones that I turned off are no longer going to be visible. So that's one area that the scroll lock key is used. So turn that back on and minimize that again, save and exit. So again, now that that's on, I go back into edit variables and everything's visible, including the buttons to turn things on or off. If you have a tab that you don't care about, so actually, sorry, let me just turn this back off again and come back to here, save and exit. So if I come in and if you don't care about seeing this Tools tab, because this is related to things like drilling and tapping and things like that. In order to make an entire tab disappear, you have to disable all of the options that would be on that tab. So if we go back in here one more time, at least one more time, and so again, we see all the different tabs that are available: pipes, printing, reports, and then I go to my tools. So if I turn all these ones off, then when I turn the scroll lock key off, that tools tab will no longer be visible normally. Clicked in the wrong place there, so I'll probably may have to do that again. See if it remembered it. Let's see, turn that off. Tools. All right, save and exit. And now that tab will be gone. So, one other place that the scroll lock key makes a difference is normally on the database menu, we only see the material and machine database. And if I activate that scroll lock key again, when that's activated, we have this global settings window. A lot of settings up here at the top that I would not mess with. One thing that may be of interest for people that have multiple people using WARDCAM and you want them all to be pointing at the same machine and material database, down here at the bottom, you can choose where WARDCAM is looking for the machine and material database. So you got 2 or 3 people programming on WARDCAM, or you got the WARDCAM installed at the machine, WARDCAM in your office, you want to work off the same material database. You can put that material database onto your network somewhere and then choose your location for that and point both seats of WARDCAM at that same location and work off that same database. So that's one place where you can, where you'd want to use the scroll lock key to get into global settings. Otherwise, I wouldn't change any other settings in there. All right, I'm going to show you a couple things on the other things on the parts screen where we did our open contour cutting before. So let me open up this file here. So this file got different things in here to show some of the different capabilities that we can do in WARDCAM. So here we're going to just cut this slit here, and similar to on that other program, I put short little line segment here so to force WARDCAM to start off slowly when it cuts this slit here. These numbers up here we're going to etch. We're just going to pierce a point at this hole here, because we're going to presume that this hole is too small to cut with the Waterjet, and we'll just pierce a location hole, and then we're going to assume that we're going to drill this offline. And then I've got this point here off in space that we're going to use as a point that we're going to go to stop, and I think that'll cover it. So over here on the left, we've got some editing tools, so that's why I've got some errors in this drawing here. So if you do bring in a DXF file, it's got some gaps or lines that are extended too far. You've got things like your trim tool, activate your trim tool, and you can click on the line segments you want to get rid of. When you're in a command, it's going to be highlighted blue over here. You've hit escape, it's always going to bring you back to the select level. If I want to close up this gap here, I can use the line command, and as I hover towards the end of a line, that little blue square is going to show up, indicating that when I click, that the line will be at the end of that line, and then click again, and we got a line at the end of that line, so that closes up that geometry. If we just want to pierce a hole at this location, we don't actually want to try to cut that circle. That's why we have this point command. So I can activate the point command, and then as I hover near the center of that circle, you see that little blue circle shows up, which tells me that if I click a point there, that'll be right at the center of that circle. Since I'm not actually going to cut that circle, I can just delete that circle. So I can either activate my delete command and click directly on it, or use my select tool. So that's just going to be a pierce. And I've got some text here that telling me this is supposed to be 1/4" aluminum. I can either leave it in there, or I can select it and get rid of it. So once we've got that, I'll hit my next button here. And in the open contour screen over here on the right, we've got different things that we can do. So earlier we looked at the open contour cutting. So for this slit here, we'll do that with the open contour cutting again. I'm going to go with the smoothest, so that looks nice. So we'll click on the end we want to pierce at, puts it up here in our cut sequence. The numbers, I want to etch those. So I'll come over here and activate my marking command. So you got the little arrow here. So when the arrow is over to the right like that, that indicates that the marking command is active. And also when you move your cursor into the main part of the screen here, you see it's got the blue line, so that indicates marking. So the end of, again, similar to the open contour cutting, the end that I click on, that's the end that it's going to start the marking at. So click there, there, and there. And since we're talking about it, let's take a look at the material file, because that determines what you're going to do with the marking, how that marking is going to be handled. So if I go into my material database, and actually before I go too much further, I'll show you what's going to happen, because I know what's going to happen here. But we'll go into our material database, and we'll look at the look in here. So normally when you first come in here, this advanced button won't be turned on, and you won't see the ramping, marking, or other tabs. If you activate the advanced button, then the ramping, marking, and other tabs show up. And if we go into the marking tab, then we have the parameters here that we can adjust. So we can tell it the speed that we want to do our marking at. If we want to have any sort of point dwell, which typically you'll want 0 or minimal point dwell, so you don't dig in too far when it does its initial pierce. And then whether you want to use abrasive or not, so you can just do water only etching, and then whether you want to do it at low or high pressure. So if you wanted a very light etch mark, you could do it without abrasive, and you could do it at low pressure, and it would be something hardly visible. But if you look very closely, you probably see it. And of course, you can vary your pressure to vary the depth of the etch mark. So that's where your etching parameters are. So we'll save that. And then, so this point over here, we just want to do a pierce at that location. Again, over here on the right, we have this point functions box. And if you click on the little, again, here, over here on the right, it'll activate this tool. And you've got choices in here for drilling, tapping, stop, and then we're going to do the abrasive pierce. So once I activate that, come over here and click, and that adds that to my cut sequence up here. And then finally, up here, we want to do a stop. So you want a cutting head to move out of the way so you can check to see the quality of the etching or something like that. You can have a point off there like that, and then choose to do the stop and click on stop, and that adds that to the cut sequence. So that will put a M00 into the code, and when the controller sees that, then the machine will stop until the operator hits continue. So, and by the way, if somebody ever comes in and mistakenly like X's out of these boxes here and they're not there, up here you've got your view menu, and you can click on cut order and process to bring those back. So I've had people mistakenly close those out and not know how to get those back. That's where those are. All right, so we'll hit our next button. So of course now at this point we'd normally do our add our leads, but you can see over here our T has disappeared, and that's because the gap here is smaller than the stream width. So I told it that I was going to use a 40 thousandths abrasive nozzle, and looks at the stream width and sees that it can't actually get through that gap because of the width of the stream. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to switch to a 1030 nozzle combination, and we'll switch back to our aluminum 1/4 inch and hit enter again. And now we can get through there because it sees that that gap allows the stream to pass through there without actually cutting into the part. So if I hit on the auto button, we'll put our tool sequence on there like normal. Of course, a part like this, I would look at maybe changing pierce locations depending on, so I'm not too close to other geometries. Might move this lead here or this lead here. So sometimes you might want to go through and just optimize where WARDCAM put the lead. And then sometimes you might want to have a lead on the corner of the part to minimize the witness mark. If we click on edit leads, there's a couple ways of doing a lead on a corner. If you set your tab width to 0, so I'm working with my outside lead in here, and I set my tab width to 0, and I click on save and exit. I'll just hit auto again just to take what we got here. And then I click over to here on the corner, it'll put the lead on the corner, or whichever corner I want to put it on. So that's fine if you don't mind not having a tab. So if it's a big enough part, you can do it like that. If you want to have a straight line lead in on a corner, but you also want a tab, then if you go back into Edit Leads, and again, you have to have your Advanced button turned on, and these in angles and out angles will show up. So if we want, say, a 20 thousandths tab, we've got our out length set to 0 because we don't want any lead outs. Set our in and out angles to 0, and then save and exit. And then I can click on this corner here, and then might have to click a couple times to get the angle I want, but then that's how you can put both a tab and a lead on a corner. And then if you go back here, like this, it's still going to do a straight line lead in, so then you'd have to go back and change it. But this is the example if you did want to lead in on your corner with a tab. So that is basically what I wanted to show you on that one. One other thing that sometimes comes up is somebody has maybe multiple machines and they've got one machine from one manufacturer, they've got a Waterjet machine. Each of those machines might have different characteristics as far as what they use for water on-off codes and things like that. So it's possible to set up multiple machines and locations for WARDCAM to look when it creates its CNC files. And those are located, again, if we go back under your C programs, Waterjet WARDCAM area for the midnight version. There's a couple areas here that we can look. So data area has, again, your material and your machine databases, which we'll come back to here in a little bit. And then if you go into the scripts area, and then under posts, you can have different setups for different machines. So I've got one set up for a multicam machine. I've got one set up for somebody with a Bernie controller. I've got a couple different versions of WARDCAM, Waterjet machines set up, Waterjet water-only machine. And the reason you might do this is, let me show you one example here. So if I go ahead and let me just create the code here and click on CNC. And sure, all right. So we might want, typically we'll do no delay between water and abrasive on, but we'll typically have a little bit of a delay after the abrasive turns on before it starts to move. And so if that's all well and good, we can set that up for an abrasive machine. But if you also have a water-only machine, you would actually probably want a very short delay after the water turns on, and you're not going to have the abrasive on code. So what we can basically do, or what I've done in this area over here, is one of these post files, I've got the variables set up where it's not going to put any delay between the water and abrasive on, but then on my water-only setup, it is going to put a delay after the water on, and then again, there won't be the abrasive on code. So basically in here, you can come in and customize if you do want your machines to behave differently. So let me take a look and see what this machine is doing here. So if we go into our machine database, this machine that I'm currently on is looking at this location here for the post processor. And then for the variables file. So if we click on edit in here, this brings up that basically that same screen we're looking at before, but in a text version. So if we click on save and exit, and I come back into options, edit variables, and I come over to my Waterjet tab, and I scroll down, and I'm going to have, right now I've got dwell after water on set to 0, which is fine for abrasive. And then dwell after abrasive on, let's see, I've got that set to 0.25. So that's all well and good. So then if I save and exit, and if I switch to now when I did that code, when I was looking at that code earlier, we didn't see that delay after the abrasive on because that was for marking. Let me just pull that back up again, sorry. So if we scroll down into the actual cutting area here, so water on, abrasive on, delay. All right. So if I don't change, So sorry, let me switch to water only machine here now. So this machine here, if I go into my machine database, I've got my water only machines pointing to this post here, the Waterjet water only, the main and the variables here. So if we skip through here, I'm just gonna do whatever for my toolpath, and we go into our edit variables now, and I go over to my Waterjet area, scroll down. So I've got this one set up where I've got the dwell after water on, which is what we would want if we were just doing this as water only. So click on CNC and save. We'll overwrite that. And so now for any of these cuts here, I've got the water on, and then I've got a half-second delay. So if you're in a situation like that where maybe you've got a machine, you want to behave a little bit differently, or you can even do this for a particular material, you got a material where you don't want to have a delay, something like that, you can do the same type thing and set up different post folders for that. One final thing, let's take a look at this question here. Yes, additional dwells for etching. So that would be probably related to what we were just looking at. So let's see here. If we go, let me go back, and I'll have to switch back to a abrasive machine again, and we'll just go with aluminum. Okay. So if you are getting a bit of a delay at that pierce, then we'd want to look in our material database, look in our marking, check that one, make sure we don't have any delay there, set that to 0. And then also you go into options, edit variables. Let's see, I believe we'd want to look on the Waterjet tab. There's probably another delay in here somewhere. So there's going to be things like dwell after marking abrasive on, dwell after marking water off, dwell after marking water on. So you'd also want to make sure that those are also set to 0. So give me a call later and we can take a look at that if that doesn't fix it. And then finally, just want to take a look at the material file. If we go back again into here, back into data, material database, for a lot of you, when you first load WARDCAM or a material, you might find that there's certain settings that you always want to change. Me personally, for example, I always like all my materials to have the lead-in feed rate, lead-out feed rate set to like 25%. But by default, when you first load WARDCAM, all of these are set to 50%. Also, when you first load WARDCAM on your leads tab, all of your other leads are always defaulting to 0.2. I've changed a lot of these already. But again, that sometimes creates issues when you go to create a part with smaller holes and the inside lead fails, tries to use the other lead, which is the same length. So of course, then that's going to fail. So you can go through and you can individually change each of those if you wanted to. Can be a little bit quicker if you're comfortable doing it, going in and actually editing this XML file, which if you are going to do this, let me close this here, because if you are going to do this, first you want to close out a WARDCAM, because if you make the changes and then you close WARDCAM, it's going to update it to what it was before anyway. So we close WARDCAM, and if I'm going to do this, I'm always just going to make a copy of this, and so that if I screw something up, I can hopefully always revert back to this this copy here. That was my material database, yes, so I'll open up my material database. So then it's a matter of just looking for the code that we're looking for. So if you look through here, we're going to have things that tell us things like outside lead-in length, outside lead-in angle. Here we have other lead-in length, and that one there is set to 3. So if I do a search for other lead-in length, starts with 5 because that's what the default one is going to be, because all these numbers are in millimeters. So okay, so we've got other lead-in length 5.08. So if I copy that, I do a search and replace other lead-in length, that paste that into my replace change this to what I want the equivalent to be in metric, 3.01 or whatever the case may be. So it'll go through that file, find all the other lead-in lengths that are set to the 5 millimeters, the 0.2, and replace them with that. So click on replace all, replace 947 occurrences, and that should take care of that. And then similar type thing for the feed rate on the lead-ins, which is going to be, let's see, where is that one? So it's a little bit tricky when you're first going through here to percentage, find it here. All right, so there we go. So we have inside lead out feed it, and then we really want the, if we do the other, we want the inside lead in percentage. So here we have inside lead in feed rate percentage 0.5, so that's 50%. So again, can copy it, Control C, Control H, paste it in, change it to what you want it to be, 25%, replace all, and then we'll save that. And if I haven't screwed anything up, then hopefully I can start up WARDCAM and bring up the material file again. So it's always good to make that copy. All right, so if we go into database, material database, and go on to our other tab, all of these inside percentages should now be 25. And then my in lengths should all be the in this case it was let's see, 0.11. So that's how you can do a mass change on certain parameters in your material file. If you're comfortable doing that, if you're not comfortable doing that, you can give me a call and I could do something like that for you also. So that basically covers everything that I was planning on covering today. If anybody's got any questions, again, feel free to type them in. Hopefully this has been somewhat informative for you. Do another one next month with WARDCAM. I'm probably just going to alternate between the basics and the advanced. So January I'll do WARDCAM basics again, and then February would be WARDCAM advanced again. If anybody has any ideas about topics that they want to see in another webinar, be it WARDCAM or ICULU or iGEMS, always open suggestions. Can email me straight at jday@wardjet.com. So if there's no questions, appreciate your time, and everybody have a great weekend. Thank you.